Hi, I'm Sable. At 5 a.m., I was still bleeding from surgery, barely able to sit up. That's when my husband kicked the bedroom door open, yelling, "Get up! Cook for my parents, now!" His mother? She just laughed and said, "Lazy women deserve pain." So I picked up my phone, not to call a friend, not to cry. I called a lawyer. Ever wonder how far a family will go to erase your voice? I wake up gasping, not because I want to, but because blood stains the sheets and pain pins me down. It's 5:17 a.m. I know this because the dim blue light from the bedroom window shows the curling edges of frost outside. My chest aches where the bandage wraps tight around my torso. I can taste copper. My throat is dry. I don't want to move, but I must. I remember little from surgery, just the dread, the cold table, the nurse's voice. Now everything pulses, the cut, the lingering narcotic in my marrow, the quiet hum of the heater as it fights off the winter chill. My hand presses against my stomach. It's wet. Fresh blood. He storms in, Nick, before sun even thinks of rising. Thrashing the door, his voice cracks open the silence like a fist. "You, get up. Cook breakfast for my parents. Now!" He spits. No softness, no concern, just demand. The kind that hits you when you're raw, the kind that means fewer words, but more damage. I try to focus past the pain. My vision flutters. I want to say, "I just had surgery," to plead that I can't, but the words, even in my mind, come out thin. My pulse hammers. I taste salt. My chest burns. Ms. Vera materializes in the doorway, herself calm, a predator satisfied. She says, without raising her voice, "Lazy women deserve pain." The sentence slices through me, clean, cold. I've heard variations of this before, whispers from dinner tables, bar conversations, sneering remarks. But never exactly like this, not in the house I share with my husband, not when I can't even move without blood reminding me of my boundaries. I stare at the blood-stained sheet, at the hem of the nightgown, at my bare leg where liquid seeps. Cold tile floor calls my name, but I stay in bed. The blood spreads, dark against pale fabric. He makes a sound, half scoff, half irritation. "Stop acting," he says, stepping toward me. "You're fine." Inside, my body trembles. Legs quiver. I can't stand. Pain flares. But I don't cry. I don't shout. My throat closes. My mind numbs itself, focuses on the essentials. Breathing. Heart. Simple moves. I see Vera's face. Perfect white hair framing a smirk. She's not worried about blood or recovery. Not about surgeries or pain. She's calibrating humiliation. Her eyes search for it, like it's evidence I don't deserve better. She stands there, disappointed in me, before I've even opened my mouth. I lie silent, listening to the ice crack outside, to the heater cycle, click, then hiss, then silence heavy around me. The house is asleep, except for me and the ache. I remember the first time I allowed this to happen, when I didn't speak up. The way I swallowed words so no one would feel uncomfortable. The time I cleaned dishes at midnight while Nick watched sports. The smile I forced when Vera told me I wasn't a real homemaker because my cooking lacked butter. The times she contrasted me with her friends' daughters, built-up daughters who didn't bleed in beds, who obeyed without complaint. All those moments collecting in my chest like stones. Pain carves honesty. Right now, I understand something terrifying. I've been guest in my own life. A guest sleeping in my own home, cooking in my own kitchen, loving in my own bed. Boundaries blurred until I questioned whether I had any rights here at all. My fingers inch toward the phone on the nightstand. I see the screen in the dim light, locked, forgotten, muted. I think of Callista, my older friend and sometimes silent ally. I think of her calling me, no judgment, when I mentioned that I thought things had to change. Maybe this is the moment I stop believing them when they say I should endure. Maybe this is the moment I stop pretending. My bored feet ache. My spine burns. I shift, roll slightly onto my back. Blood seeps further. The sheet clings to me. The pain says, "You are alive." And I say, maybe that's enough. I pick up the phone. Thumb hovers over the dial. My voice is not ready. My hand shakes. But I whisper, "Callista." It's a name, a promise, a bridge to something other than this house, this pain. I don't need to scream. I don't need applause. I need someone to hear, and maybe someone to help me remember who I am. Callista, it's me, Sable. I need a lawyer. I hang up before I hear her voice. My heart thuds like a failing drum. My hand trembles, still smelling antiseptic and blood. I stay sitting on the edge of the bed, my feet dangling at the floor, legs weak, stitches humming in protest. It's just past 6 a.m., faint light creeping through my curtains. Nick's snore rumbles from the room next door. Vera's hallway footsteps, purposeful, sharp, fade into distance. I press my forehead to my knees, breathing shallow. I push myself upright. Each movement is a jolt. My lower abdomen protests with fire. My torso aches. I manage to cross the short hall to the bathroom. The mirror reflects a gaunt version of me. Dark circles hollow under my eyes, skin drawn tight over cheekbones. My hair, tangled, frames a face I barely recognize. I wipe at dried blood at the corner of my nightgown with a damp cloth. The water feels cold, clinical. I force myself not to shudder. Water from the faucet drips rhythmically. I draw a shallow breath in, let it out. I turn the cold knob with slow precision, splash water to clean the clot behind my ear. "You're not broken," I tell my reflection. My voice echoes slightly in the small room. I want to believe it. I really do. Walking to the kitchen takes forever. My bare toes touch chilly tile. A thin robe, unbuttoned, flaps behind me. I catch a whiff of coffee someone left the night before, stale and bitter. The house is quiet. Nick is still asleep. Vera must be upstairs, judging as usual. The silence feels heavy, loaded. I set a pot of water on the stove, flick the burner on. Flames sizzle. I look at the coffee pot. Maybe she would like this, Callista. My hands tremble so badly I have to steady one on the counter. The hot water steams. I hear Nick's voice behind me before I see him. He paces in. He grips the counter edge. "Stop pretending," he says. The words cut clean through me. I'm burning. "Pretending what?" My voice rough. I taste metal, anger and something else, sharper. He sneers. "You always act like you're going to fall apart, like we're all supposed to wait on you." I don't argue. I don't shout. I watch his lips move. He doesn't see the stitches beneath my nightgown, the blood spot I tried to wash away, the fear perched in my bones. He thinks this is performance. He thinks weakness is my identity. I grip the mug in my hands until my knuckles turn white. The steam stings my palms. Vera appears at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold. She watches me, watched me. My every failure in her mind. She sips tea, tilts her head. "He's right, you know," she says. "You make pain your story." Her voice is smooth, public. Her eyes flick to the clock. 6:45. Too early for kindness. She wants a reaction. She expects tears. She expects collapse. But I stand still. I take a breath, steady, measured. Pain throbs behind ribs. My cheek burns from where Nick brushed me. I ignore the dizziness. I place mug on table with soft resolve. My robe slips slightly, stitched wound exposed, but I pull it closed with shaking fingers. I will not give her another glance at broken. "Good morning," I say. She blinks. Nick's face flushes. Silence thickens. I walk away without turning. Into guest room. Lock the door. Sit on the bed, chest heaving. I open my phone. Callista. Her contact glows. I don't ring yet. I scroll through old messages, soft condolences when Mom died, birthday greetings I never got back, guilt, distance. They had drifted. Then I pull up contacts. I press lawyer, Callista Reed. I save. My fingers hover over the call button. I don't know where this leads, but I do know this. I am not going to stay quiet again. I reach for my journal. Dark brown leather. I open to a blank page. Pen in hand, I write in careful script. This house is not my home anymore. Ink flows over the page. My chest tightens. Something inside me shifts. Dangerous, hopeful. Outside, a car door slams. Birds chirp. Morning forging ahead, indifferent. I close the journal, Place it by the window where dawn touches the sill. A paper envelope lies hidden under a stack of mail on the kitchen desk. I remember seeing it: papers, bank statements, the deed, things I helped sign but never saw. Tonight, I'll find it. Because I need proof, because I need to know what I own. It was past midnight when I crept into the guest bedroom closet, breathing so lightly I thought the floorboards might betray me. The house is asleep, or pretending to be. Outside, snow drifts quietly against windows, turning steel sky into muted silver. I flick on a small lamp by the closet's edge. Folders, old insurance bills, and a tax file hide behind winter coats. My fingers hover over dusty edges until I pull one forward. A folder stamped with the bank's seal. Within it, the deed. My name is printed. Solo. No Nick. No Vera. Just mine. Shock shivers through me, not the kind that leaves you empty, but the kind that lights something hot inside. My pulse races. I trace the letters with trembling fingertips. S-A-B-L-E. Mine. I know it's not wrong. I remember signing forms 7 years ago, Nick and I, arm in arm, dreaming of stability. He didn't have the income yet. The bank insisted on collateral. I offered credit. I believed that loving him would mean equal. I believed that once we had a home, things would change. But I didn't know then how easy it was for trust to fracture. I lean against the wood-paneled wall, knees weak, breathing shallow. I read a mortgage statement tucked behind property tax receipts. Late notice, months overdue, hidden behind flyers advertising Nick's gym membership. I pull them out. Every bill says recipient with my name. Every envelope stamped in my handwriting, though I didn't open them. Nick must have known. Vera must have known. They didn't want me to see. So I slip into flashback, signing papers at the attorney's office, a chandelier, walnut table, crisp air. The attorney's pen slides across documents. Nick squeezes my hand. I smile. I trust his smile. Vera sits silent, measuring me with eyes that always knew more than they said. She had suggested I leave certain papers in her care, saying I was busy, fragile. That was years ago. I refused. I didn't think then about what I was refusing until I saw what had followed. Back in the closet, I realized the power I've hoarded without knowing. Legal ownership isn't just a word, it's proof. It means that the floor under my feet has anchors. It means Vera's words, "You're worthless in property matters," were not roots. They were lies. Then I find letters, refinancing proposals addressed to Nick that require my signature. I cross them out in my head. I see the deception. Behind polite dinners and hollow apologies, I was being stripped of protectors and rights. Vera had tried to push financial control to him. He had accepted. My heart clenches with grief and furious clarity. I tuck everything into a yellow envelope marked "Truth" in case of fire. I carry it out of the closet, my robe dragging, my bare feet whispering cold across carpet. I pass the bathroom on my way to the guest room. Mirror's reflection, shadowed, fierce. I'm more awake now than I've been in years. I sit on the bed, the envelope across my lap. I stare at the door. I almost want a confrontation. Nick walking in, Vera watching, someone saying, "Explain yourself." But I don't need that spectacle. I need proof. I need strength rooted in fact. I need to see this weight move from chest to court. I open the enveloped deed and bills. Evidence. My name clutches them. I flip through. Property tax certificates, statements showing I alone pay certain bills. Odd repairs I asked for, paid out of pocket, never acknowledged. I imagine a courtroom where Vera's voice thunders and I stand silent with those paper soldiers in hand. My mind drifts. If they found this first, they would gaslight me. That's why it was hidden. That explains dinners with deliberate omissions. That bitter tea, that accidents in paperwork, the way Nick always spoke over me, silencing me. Snow hits the window pane with delicate taps, as if urging me forward. I rise from bed, journal in hand, pen poised. I write, "This deed is mine. These papers are mine. I will defend what's mine." Outside, midnight feels less oppressive. I wrap the robe tighter, pinching cold fabric between my fingers. I breathe, letting revelations settle in my bones. We were halfway through dinner when Nick raised his glass and said, "Let's talk about inheritance." I freeze, fork halfway to my mouth. The table falls into a fragile silence. The room feels smaller. Outside, I remember snow drifting across the windows, the cold from 2 nights ago still clinging in corners. I look at Vera sitting at the head of the table, relatives murmuring, plates of roast and potatoes glistening. My hands tighten around my napkin. Nick smiles at everyone, like he's unwrapping a gift. "You know, when the kids are grown, the house will pass to me. Naturally. I've always handled the bills, the yard, the upkeep." He glances at me, theatrically. A few laughs ripple around. Vera nods, sipping her wine. Something hot rises in my throat. I swallow back the shock. Wasn't this meal supposed to be normal? Family gathering, laughter, small talk about the church's Christmas choir next month? Instead, this feels like an ambush. Nick continues, "Sable's never been the type to manage property or responsibility beyond the kitchen, right?" The words land like stones. The guests laugh. My face flushes. I force myself to smile, a thin, quiet curve. "Some people cook," Vera says. "Others take care of taxes." Discomfort floods me, rage mingled with humiliation. My shoulders stiff. I chew on my inner lip. I don't respond. I've seen this before. Every insult, every slight meant to erode my claim to this house, my claim to any power here. Tonight is no different. Only this time, I'm ready to listen, not for goodness, but for ammunition. Under the table, I reach into my pocket. My fingers brush the phone I tucked there earlier. I remembered Vera's strategy: make everyone believe I'm soft, vulnerable, make me seem incapable. This way, no one notices the bank statements, the deed, the mortgage payments I made quietly, without argument. The silverware clinks. My cousins glance between me and Vera. Nick pours more wine for Vera, as though he's toasting his own victory. I feel the weight of expectations, that I stay silent, that I endure. I decide to break that mold. The hum of chandelier lights above, mouths chewing, forks pausing. I press record on my phone, hidden beneath the tablecloth. I remember Callista's advice: they'll expose themselves when they think you're small. So I wait. I listen. Nick raises his voice. "It's always been mine, though." He leans forward, the smile slipping. Vera nods, pleased. Without Sable's name on the documents, it'd be just me. She says it like fact. Other relatives murmur approval. I see satisfaction in their eyes. Even Judith, my cousin, suppresses a grin. For a moment, fury rises. I taste fear. My throat dry. I let it pass. No tears, no outburst. Instead, I sip my water. I hold on to my plate. I imagine her words recorded. I imagine the tape in court. I imagine them choking on their own laughter when the truth comes out. After dinner, when the dishes are wrapped and relatives depart, I tidy the dining room. I move chairs back to their places. I clean up spilled wine, wipe crusted gravy from my cooking dishes. The motions calm me. Though the ache in my side reminds me I haven't healed, not fully. My body complains, but I control the mind. Later, I sit at my dressing table. I open the makeup drawer, push aside rouge tubes and brushes. I plug a USB into the charger. I copy over the recording labeled Dinner Trap, Part 1. The file name bursts into virtual existence. I slide the USB back, hiding it where no one searches. My journal lies on the desk. My life written in ink, not whispers. Moonlight streams through curtains. I open the journal to a fresh page. Pen trembling slightly, I write, "I'm done hiding." I close it, heart pounding. I feel the shift. This ordinary house, this table, this meal. These will be part of my evidence, part of what I build from. In the hush of midnight, I believe something I've scarcely allowed myself. I am no longer invisible. I am no longer just background music in their conversation. I own something deeper than this dinner. I own conviction, I didn't spend the night tossing, rolling, or pretending everything was fine. I lay in bed after midnight, the journal still open, that page that read, "I'm done hiding." I stared at it until sleep came, incoherent and thin. Dawn arrived icy and pale. I woke, heart pounding in a stiff house, the air static with things unsaid. Morning light glints off the kitchen counter. I switch on the kettle, the hiss like an alarm. I measure the tea bags, pull water from the kettle, let it steep. Everything feels sharp, the ache in my side, the sting of betrayal still fresh, the faint taste of fear. I inhale deeply, steam, tea, and the silence before a storm. I want to hold this moment. I want to decide now. How loud will I speak? How much will I endure? Nick enters quietly at first. The scrape of his foot on hardwood echoes. I don't turn. He waits by the stove. He says, "We need to talk." His voice soft, familiar. I stir sugar into my tea. I set the spoon down, even though my hand shakes. "One chance to stop, just one," I say without looking up. Calm, precise. My voice doesn't tremble. It echoes into the kitchen corners. Nick's face falters. Surprise lingers in his eyes. He laughs, low, sharp. "What are you going to do? Talk to your lawyer friend?" he says, stepping closer. The question is a dagger, humiliation hidden in mock concern. "Try me," I reply, turning so he sees, tea in hand. I feel the burn in my side, but I steady my spine. "I'm choosing this confrontation." He scoffs. His shoulder knocks the counter. A plate rattles. Vera appears in the doorway, hair pinned back, her expression flat. "Stop this," she says. "You're being dramatic, Sable." Her words hang clean in the air, like a verdict. His hand rises swiftly. I don't dodge. I don't flinch. The slap lands. The sound, skin hitting skin, stuns me. A sudden red bloom spreads on my cheek. My head snaps sideways, my cheek burns, my eyes sting, with shock, not crying. Vera watches, doesn't intervene, just sips tea. "You expect sympathy?" she says. "Everyone here works hard. Some people don't get to rest." She tilts her chin. "We can't be helping someone who can't even hold her own." The words slam into me like icy rain. I press a hand to my cheek. My cheekbone throbs. I taste copper. I want to scream. I want someone to say something, anything. But silence holds me still. I grip the edge of the counter. I breathe. I want dignity more than reaction. Later in the afternoon, the phone rings. My former boss. I drop a mug. It hits the sink and cracks. I freeze. The line crackles. "Sable, I heard from Nick. He said you're mentally unstable. He told people you walked into walls. You forget conversations. He says you're no longer reliable at work." A lie coded in truth's scent. I can't immediately correct it. Not here. Not yet. His voice trembles between polite and decisive. I say nothing. Hang up. My stomach twists. Betrayal isn't just physical. It's when someone paints you as fragile, so no one trusts your words. I sink to the floor, back against the cabinets. I let throat choke. I taste salt from tears I force down. I remember burning pots in the kitchen, choosing sides, forgiving too quickly. Memories assault me. Still, I refuse collapse. I drag myself to my desk. Journal waits. Pen, clean ink. Light from the window softens as afternoon fades. I write, "Today he touched me. He lied about me. Now I touch back." The sentence burns into paper. I take out a folder from a drawer, a blank file titled Divorce Draft, File A. I open it. I pull together thoughts, legal notes, evidence I've gathered. Deed, mortgage statements, the tape from dinner, hidden notices of late fees, emails I saved, photographs of my scar. They sit in order, silent witnesses. Pain pulses in my side. My cheek still tingles. I trace the bruising under my hair. The house is quiet. Evening light spills through blinds, striping walls with gold and dust. I slide the folder into my bag. I lock my desk. I walk through living room, Nick reading the newspaper, Vera's voice humming a hymn from the radio. I pause at the archway. I meet Nick's eyes. I don't speak. I stand there with my back straight, bag heavy at my side. He looks away. I woke before dawn, long before the first streak of sunlight filtered through the curtains. The room was still, the kind of silence that presses against your ribs and leaves you listening for sounds that aren't there. When I lifted a hand to my cheek, the bruise throbbed, hot beneath my fingers, tender like a wound that wanted to speak. Every heartbeat echoed through the swelling. I drew in a sharp breath and rolled my shoulders, pulling on a wool coat over yesterday's clothes. At the front door, I paused. The foyer smelled faintly of dust and cedar polish. My eyes landed on the framed photograph that had hung there for years. Nick and me, both smiling wide, our arms around each other as if nothing could divide us. That photo belonged to another life, a version of us that had already burned away. I lingered, staring, then let the air leave my lungs in a single, steady exhale. Today was no longer about surviving. Today was about acting. The courthouse loomed like a stone sentinel against the winter sky. Its glass doors gleamed cold, reflecting gray clouds. Inside, the air was sterile, tinged with disinfectant, stale leather briefcases, and polished wood. Underneath it all, I smelled something else. Fear. Mine, yes, but also in the people moving around me. A woman in a heavy coat hugged her child close, as if shielding her from everything the building represented. A man in a navy business suit flipped through papers, lips moving as he rehearsed arguments. Everyone carried their burdens in folders, in envelopes, in their eyes. I stepped past security. The metal detector beeped once, high-pitched and sharp. A guard waved me through after a cursory glance at my bag. My side still ached with each movement, the scar beneath its bandage raw against fabric, but I kept walking. My fingers pressed against the inside pocket of my coat where the envelope rested, marked in thick black ink. Truth, evidence. At the family court filing window, the clerk glanced up with professional detachment, his expression practiced after years of absorbing other people's crises. I slid the packet forward across the counter. Cover sheet. Affidavit. Copy of the deed. Audio file transcripts from the dinner. Photographs of my bruises. Every page ordered, stacked, aligned. My preparation was my armor. I watched his fingers move with deliberate rhythm over stamps and initials. The thud of each stamp echoed like a drumbeat. He tapped his pencil once against the counter, glanced at me, and said quietly, "You seem ready." His tone wasn't congratulatory, just an observation. I met his eyes and answered with no hesitation. "Yes, I want to begin formal divorce proceedings." There was no scream, no burst of rage, only words, plain and heavy with meaning. Words that carried more weight than all the shouting Vera had done, more than all the dismissive laughter Nick had tossed my way. Later that day, winter wind cut at my cheeks as I crossed the street toward the police department. The building's brick walls looked imposing, but inside the lobby, the warmth was steady, buzzing with fluorescent light. The officer at the desk greeted me politely, as though I were there for something minor. But when I laid the folder on the counter and began to explain, his demeanor shifted. I showed him medical reports, photos of the bruise, still vivid against my skin, screenshots of messages, the recording from that dinner where Vera's laughter dripped with cruelty. When I mentioned Vera's name, his posture changed. He straightened, pen halting mid-stroke. His voice sharpened, heavier, as though the word itself carried weight in the station. "I'll file a report for domestic abuse," he said. His pen moved quickly now, the scratch of ink across paper fast and deliberate. "We'll need your full statement. And we'll issue subpoenas for digital evidence." The sound of that word, subpoena, cut through me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Evidence, process, justice. For once, it wasn't only me standing against their lies. I didn't return home right away. Instead, I drove until the streets narrowed into quiet, until I reached a small park tucked beneath bare branches. The benches glittered with frost. I sat alone, hands clasped in my lap, my breath forming white puffs that disappeared into the air, relief and fear twisted together in my chest. I realized then how heavy silence had been, an anchor dragging through every year of my life. Letting go of it didn't feel sweet, it felt bitter, but it was freedom all the same. When I finally walked back into the house, the air was sharp with tension. Vera sat in the living room, her hand curled loosely around a fork. She looked up the second I entered, eyes narrowing at the sight of the blue folder I carried. My folder of documents, the one that meant her power was slipping. Nick hovered just behind her, his expression unreadable, lips pressed into a thin line. "You expect thanks?" Vera asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "After all we've done, you file papers against us?" Her feigned shock stung worse than yesterday's slap. I didn't answer with argument. Instead, I pressed a button on my phone. A recording played softly but clearly. Her laughter, sharp and cutting, from that dinner she thought no one remembered. "She's too soft to survive alone," her voice sneered from the tiny speaker. The sound clinked against the silence like glass breaking. Vera's fork slipped, striking the plate. Her face paled, draining of its smug color. Nick shifted uneasily, but said nothing. I didn't defend myself. I didn't apologize. I simply sat, the lamp overhead spilling a warm circle across my skin. Vera opened her mouth, venom ready to spill, but I lifted my voice before she could. Calm, even, steady. "When I recorded that night," I said, "I didn't expect we would ever speak about it in front of others. But here's the truth, Vera. Your words speak louder than mine ever could." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I let the recording hang in the air like proof carved into stone. Silence followed. Vera's eyes flickered. Panic, regret, maybe even fear. By late afternoon, I sat alone at my desk in the guest room. Light bled through the blind slats, stripes of fading sun across my papers. I opened my journal and began to write. My pen moved smoothly, confidently, no smudges marring the page. "I filed today," I wrote. My hand didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. This is mine now. Each stroke carried strength I hadn't known I possessed. When I finished, I composed a message to Callista. "It's done. I want full custody of the house." My thumb hovered before I pressed send. I could almost hear her reply already, her voice fierce and protective. Then I pressed the button. My phone buzzed in my lap a moment later, vibrating like an answered prayer. Outside, dusk painted the sky in gray and violet. I stood at the window, watching bare branches sway. I knew what was coming. Retaliations, lies, whispered rumors crawling through town. But I had already crossed the threshold. I was no longer cowering inside silence. I had begun to claim not just walls and deeds, but my own truth. And for the first time in years, I did not feel exposed. I felt solid. I felt mine. The first vibration of my phone came before dawn. The sky was still dark, only the faintest pale line cracking the horizon, when the flood began. I rubbed my eyes, confused, then froze at the screen. Messages stacked like bricks, each one heavier than the last. Screenshots. Links. "Is this you? Are you okay? Why would you put this out there?" My stomach dropped. They had posted my medical files online, surgery reports, prescription bottles, therapy notes from years ago, the kind of private records that lived in locked drawers and sealed envelopes, never meant to be touched by strangers' hands. Now, they were everywhere, with captions, no less. "She's crazy and dangerous." My whole life, reduced to ridicule, weaponized. I scrolled through message after message. Some people reached out with pity. "Praying for you, girl." Others turned cruel. "Guess we knew she was unstable." Many didn't care about me at all. They were just entertained. Every ping of my phone dug deeper, stripping away the last threads of privacy I thought I still had. I rose slowly, every joint knotted tight. My face still held yesterday's bruise, skin swollen, tender under the touch of cold water. I washed in silence, but I avoided the mirror. I couldn't bear the reflection staring back at me, not when the world outside already felt like it was laughing. In the kitchen, the fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Harsh, unflattering. The coffee tasted bitter. black, but at least it was steady in my hands. From downstairs, I heard Vera's laughter drifting upward, Nick's low voice chiming in, casual, amused, careless. Their joy was salt in a wound. I clenched my jaw, breathed in, breathed out. I left the house just to escape the air. Driving with the window cracked, cold morning wind slid across my face, sharp enough to sting, but not enough to wake me from this nightmare. At the grocery store, the cracked tiles under my shoes echoed. I moved slowly through aisles, filling a cart with vegetables, bread, milk. I felt someone glance my way, linger for half a second too long, their expression shifting once recognition hit. I didn't need to guess what they had seen online. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I looked down, pretending to compare labels. Shame is a flame. It burns even when you don't feed it. By afternoon, the whispers had spread further. The church group text threads, once filled with verses and casserole schedules, were poisoned now. Someone had forwarded the documents. Someone else had made a meme of my face, plastered it under the word unstable. The community where I once found safety now circled me like vultures. I stood in my driveway and heard muffled conversation from across the street. Curtains shifted when I turned my head. Doors shut too quickly. My name, my history, my body. They had become weapons in other people's mouths. Then Callista called. Her voice steadied me even as it cracked under the weight of her anger. They crossed the line, Sable. This isn't just slander, it's felony territory. Cyber harassment, medical privacy laws. We can use this. We just need the evidence, screenshots, metadata. I'll help you. I sat at the table, phone warm in my hand, coffee cooling untouched. For a long moment, I said nothing. The silence stretched. Then, almost in a whisper, "Okay. I'll come to the station after tonight's service." By dusk, I had collected everything. I saved the emails, the messages, the timestamps. I backed them up on drives, copied them into folders. My hands, once trembling, were steady now. I photographed the posts, captured the comments. Fear still coiled in my chest, yes, but it was different now. It wasn't paralyzing. It was fuel. That night, I pushed open the heavy door of the police station. The air inside was cool, steady, fluorescent, safe. I pressed my back against the wall and inhaled. A detective came out to meet me. He asked questions, voice firm but not unkind. Who posted these? When? Did you consent? I handed over audio files, screenshots, recordings. He flipped through them, brows furrowing. He nodded. This qualifies as cyber harassment, he said. His pen scratched across the form. We'll file a report. We'll subpoena their devices. The words landed like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Subpoena. A devices. Evidence. For once, it wasn't just me against whispers. It was law. Later at home, the night pressed heavy. I sat with a single lamp lit, the glow spreading across the coffee table. In my lap, an old photograph of Mom. She was smiling, arms wrapped around me at some winter break. I didn't answer Vera with words. Words, I had learned, were too easily dismissed. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the subpoena. The thin paper looked unassuming, yet its weight could topple walls. I held it high enough for the congregation to see, the embossed seal glinting faintly in the morning sun that poured through stained glass. For a moment, silence smothered the sanctuary. The choir's hymn faltered mid-note, their voices hanging like smoke in the rafters. Even the organ seemed to choke on air. I saw it land, first in Vera's eyes. Her face drained of color, as if someone had pulled a plug, leaving only pale shock. Nick stiffened in the pew behind me. The pastor froze mid-gesture at the pulpit, lips parted, confusion rippling across his features. St. Jude's Community Church had never felt so still. The wooden pews gleamed beneath light the color of lilac and gold. Dust motes floated lazily, catching the sun, as if the very air held its breath. I could smell the lavender perfume of Mrs. Jacobs 3 rows ahead, mingled with the sharp tang of old pine from the polished benches. My heart pounded so loudly it almost drowned out the whispers stirring in the back rows. The subpoena trembled slightly in my grip, not from fear, but from the magnitude of this moment. My spine straightened. My jaw locked. I wasn't small anymore. I wasn't silent. Then my hand slipped into the inside pocket of my coat. My fingers brushed the Bluetooth speaker I had hidden there, a device so ordinary it looked almost absurd in a place meant for prayer. The plastic felt cool against my palm. I clicked it on, and the sound echoed louder than expected, a sharp punctuation in the hush. Then came the recording. Vera's laughter, bright, mocking, cruel, filled the sanctuary. The sound spilled into the high arches, clashing with the solemn echoes of church bells still faint from earlier. Her voice, unmistakable, rang out. "She's weak. Let the world see it." The effect was immediate. Gasps rippled down the rows like a wave crashing against shore. Children who had been singing moments ago froze mid-verse, their mouths small circles of surprise. Mrs. Carter, who had known me since childhood, pressed a hand over her chest, eyes wide. Nick's hand flew instinctively to his mouth, as if he could push the words back inside before they spread. And Vera, her mask cracked. The glass in her hand tilted dangerously, liquid sloshing. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The pink flush of her cheeks drained to bone white. The recording repeated, each syllable sharper the second time, weak. The word hung heavy, heavier than any insult hurled in private. It wasn't just me hearing it anymore. It was the whole congregation. It was every neighbor who had whispered rumors, every friend who had doubted. Proof. Someone in the back whispered, "Is this real?" The murmur darted across pews like electricity. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I let the recording repeat once more, Vera's cruelty echoing until no one could deny it. Nick surged forward suddenly, fury flashing in his eyes. "You're crazy!" he shouted, his voice sharp, desperate, breaking the fragile order of the church. His words rang hollow, thick with denial. I didn't flinch. I turned my head just slightly toward the front row. My voice was calm, steady. "Would you like to hear what he said about the church ladies, too?" A ripple of discomfort moved across the sanctuary, heads lowered, eyes avoided mine. Nobody wanted more. The message was clear. What I had revealed was already enough. Then came movement at the back doors. A tall figure stepped inside, a detective from the cyber division, flanked by a uniformed officer. Their badges caught the sunlight. Authority in flesh and bone. One carried papers, another subpoena. Their footsteps echoed across the aisle, slow, deliberate, and heavy with inevitability. The detective leaned down, whispered something to Vera and Nick. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I saw the panic bloom in their eyes, sharp and uncontainable. Panic that comes only when you realize the trap has already closed, that there's no way out. Vera's hand dropped limply to her side. Nick's jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. I drew in a breath, not from fear, but from triumph. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one shrinking. They were. The congregation shifted in their seats, torn between disbelief and recognition. Authority had entered the scene. Accountability had arrived, and it was undeniable. Vera opened her mouth, tried to speak, but her words collapsed before they left her throat. Nick moved as if to step toward the pulpit, to reclaim control, but no one followed. The pews remained rigid, faces turned toward me, or toward the evidence that had spoken for me louder than I ever could. I didn't stay standing in the aisle. I walked calmly back to my seat, the echo of my footsteps filling the space. I didn't glance behind me. I didn't need to. The balance of power had already shifted. As I sat down, the pastor tried to resume the service. His voice wavered at first, as though even scripture felt small beside the truth just revealed. Yet the sanctuary listened, and somewhere behind me, I caught a whisper, soft but strong. "She's stronger than all of them combined." The words hit deeper than applause, deeper than vindication. They threaded through me like a lifeline. My throat tightened, pride and humility colliding in my chest. Around me, people avoided Vera and Nick. Some shifted uncomfortably, refusing to meet their gaze. Others tilted their heads toward me, small nods of recognition, as though saying, "We see you now." I touched my cheek, the skin still tender where yesterday's bruise lingered under my hairline. It throbbed faintly, a reminder of pain, but not of shame, of survival. I closed my eyes briefly and heard my mother's voice in memory. Speak last. Speak truth. She had said it long ago when I was too young to understand. Now I understood. Every paper I had filed, every recording I had saved, every backup tucked away, it had all been leading here. This moment was the voice of truth breaking silence. The pastor closed the sermon with words of compassion, calling for unity, for community. But the compassion I saw was not for Vera or Nick. It wasn't pity for me either. It was something larger, for truth itself, for the invisible battles fought in houses and hallways, for those who endured quietly until the day they could no longer. When we rose to leave, applause scattered unevenly through the pews. Not for the sermon, not for ritual, but for courage, for justice made visible. I walked out of St. Jude's with my head high. The subpoena tucked back in my bag, the recording still safe. Behind me, Vera and Nick sat isolated, cornered by the truth they thought they had buried. Ahead of me, sunlight blazed bright across the church steps. For the first time in years, I felt taller than the shadows that had once owned me. 3 months later, I found myself walking through the arched doors of that same church, but this time, I wasn't walking alone. Callista's hand brushed mine, a quiet reminder of solidarity as we stepped inside. The high windows filtered the morning sun, spilling lilac and gold light across the nearly empty pews. The sanctuary felt familiar, yet transformed. Where once silence had pressed down heavy, now whispers stirred, soft and cautious. Faces that used to turn away from me, neighbors, former friends, even distant relatives, lifted toward me with nods, tentative smiles, gestures wrapped in sympathy. It was not absolution, not instant forgiveness, but something gentler, a public acknowledgement that I was still standing. For the first time, I felt the church wasn't just a building I entered. It was a house I was claiming, with witnesses to see me step forward. The consequences hadn't come with explosions or dramatic confessions. They arrived in quieter forms, legal filings, courthouse corridors, thick envelopes stamped with seals. Vera eventually took a plea deal. No prison sentence, though part of me wanted to see bars close behind her. Instead, the court ordered therapy, community service, and a public apology. When she delivered it, her voice trembled as local news cameras captured every word. "I regret what I did," she said, and though the statement was thin, it was broadcast across town. It mattered less whether I believed her. What mattered was that her excuses had finally run out. The world heard her say she was wrong. Nick's downfall came differently. His company released him, citing behavior unbecoming an employee. The official explanation spoke of performance issues, as if incompetence alone had undone him. But I knew the truth. Behind the polished HR language was the weight of complaints, reports, whispers that could no longer be buried. I had offered testimony, cold, factual, and undeniable. That testimony was picked up by a local advocacy group, When Home is Broken. They used my story as a case study, showing how silence enables abuse, how documents and evidence matter more than screams. I watched the recording later, saw strangers in folding chairs nodding at my words. Some whispered, "Thank you for being brave." For the first time, my pain became something useful, something beyond me. I thought back to the night I clutched a subpoena, the paper trembling in my hands. I had nearly thrown it into the fire then, nearly chosen silence over exposure. But I hadn't. I had stepped forward. And though legal power is never clean, messy with compromises, loopholes, settlements, it was still power. It still shifted the ground. That afternoon, after church, I sat in my garden. Summer's early warmth lay across my bare arms. The rose bushes I had planted the previous year leaned heavy with swelling buds, ready to burst. My hands shook as I pressed soil around their roots, but this time, the tremor wasn't fear. It was memory. I had kept the house. I had defended what was mine. Yet ghosts still lingered in the hallways. They didn't scream or slam doors anymore. They whispered in the smell of unopened emails, in the faint trace of old arguments replaying when the house was too quiet. Ghosts don't leave quickly. They stay until you learn how to live with them, then fade when you no longer need their reminder. That evening, an envelope arrived, slipped through the mail slot. The handwriting stopped me cold. My estranged sister's. I unfolded it carefully, already knowing what it might say. She apologized. She said she was sorry for not believing me, for mocking me at Thanksgiving dinners, for echoing Vera's criticisms without questioning them. She wrote that siding with them had been easier than standing with me. Her words burned with guilt. Years' worth of laughter and dismissal turned into fragile ink. But as I read, I felt no tears, no crack in my chest. I walked outside to the fire pit, laid the letter inside, and struck a match. The flames curled the edges, blackened the words, turned confession into ash. Smoke drifted up, carrying regret I did not need to shoulder anymore. I closed my eyes, let it go, let everything rise and scatter into the wind. In quiet triumph, I started giving back. Twice a week, I volunteered at a women's shelter. I didn't tell them everything, not in full detail. Instead, I taught what mattered. That your name still holds weight, that ownership counts, that if you speak with proof, the law does listen. One evening, a woman sat across from me, her eyes red from tears. She studied me for a long time, then whispered, "You don't talk much, but you look like you survived a storm." I leaned back in my chair, breathing deeply. "I didn't just survive," I told her. "I rebuilt." Her eyes filled. Mine stayed dry. I had learned that tears were not the only proof of pain. Sometimes, composure was the louder testimony. When I came home that night, I pulled out my journal, the leather cover warm from where it rested in the sun. I traced the pages filled with my handwriting, words I had written through bruises, through fear, through trial days that stretched into nights. I glanced at the mirror on the wall. The bruise across my temple had faded, but the shadow of it still lived inside me. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "They tried to bury me in silence. I answered with documents, not screams. With truth, not drama." I closed it softly, letting the weight of the journal press down the pages like a final seal. Later, I stepped onto the front porch. The lights glowed, casting circles across the yard. The house felt quieter than ever before. Not empty, not hollow, but peaceful. The walls no longer carried whispers, they stood with me. Through the window, I saw the garden lights flicker, rose petals drifting onto the soil like gentle punctuation. I leaned on the railing, the wood warm beneath my palms. No, I wasn't fully healed. Healing is not a finish line. But I was alive in a house that was truly mine. And this silence, the silence I had once feared, no longer felt like exile. It felt like peace. What this story reminds us is simple, but powerful. Silence can either be your prison or your power, depending on when you choose to break it. Sable didn't fight back with rage. She fought with evidence, patience, and resolve. How many women stay quiet because they're told they're overreacting, too emotional, or just not strong enough? Maybe it's time we start listening differently. If this story moved you, leave a comment. What would you have done in her shoes? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More real stories, more strength, and maybe, just maybe, more justice.